All right, good morning. I'm going to call this meeting to order at 9:01. For the record, I am Mark Voloshin, Deputy Secretary of State for Elections, here on behalf of Secretary of State Francisco Aguilar, and I am joined today by my colleagues, Ms. Heather Hardy and Ms. Stacy Sunday from the Elections Division. First and foremost, if you are interested in participating in this meeting, you may do so over the phone by calling 1-888-475-4499 and then provide the meeting ID number, which is 835-5242-2073. Again, the phone number is 1-888-475-4499 with a meeting ID number of 835-5242-2073. When prompted for a participant ID, press the pound button. Then press star 9 to take your place in the queue. Agenda item 2. This is public comment on matters not on the agenda. Comments will be limited to 2 minutes per person. Is anyone interested in providing public comment about a matter not on the agenda? If so, please come forward, identify yourself, and spell your name for the record, please. And we'll start here in Carson, then we'll go to Las Vegas, and then finally to the phones. Here in Carson, seeing none. I see somebody in Las Vegas. Thank you.
Yes, my name is Ed Uhling, Uhling. I think there's nothing to be gained by these hearings and request that they be stopped. Number one, you don't admit to any of the abuses that you yourself and your boss engaged in during the 2024 election. You did everything you could to keep non-Democrat, non-Republican candidates off the ballot. Just what happened to JFK Jr. and Jill Stein is absolutely outrageous. It's all thanks to your office. You misused the office to keep nonpartisans off the ballot by actually using what you're doing yesterday and presumably today of making sure that your records are straight, using those records to deny the ability of nonpartisans to get on the ballot by questioning their petitions. Virtually no one is present at these hearings. Number two, number three, actually, no one's present at these hearings. Your own office here in Las Vegas didn't even know about these hearings. I went up to the office and the head of the office knew absolutely nothing about these hearings. And I think that's the only other office you have in the state other than your office in Carson City. I could be wrong about that. There's no, here in Las Vegas, there's no access to paper information, only things on the internet, which a lot of people don't understand and can't deal with. Every other hearing that we have here in Las Vegas has paper present that you can read and changes that you intend to make and what you're doing, what you're planning to do. Fourth, let me just recommend one change that would help a lot, and that is to make it possible to file lawsuits against your agency in another court other than that corrupt court in the city of Carson City, where the agencies of the state have total control over what the decisions are of that court. It means if you're here in Las Vegas, it means driving 500 miles or 400 miles to file a case, having to wait and then having to come back. It's absolutely well, it's another way that your agency controls what is going to go on the ballot. No one can get a fair hearing. There's there's so much corruption, and you're part of it, and definitely your Cisco Aguilera is part of this. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Euling. Seeing no one else in Las Vegas broadcasting, is there anybody on the phones, please?
Thank you, Chair. If you would like to provide public comment, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits of 948, you are unmuted. Please begin when ready.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, thank you so much. My name is Christina McConnell. Earlier in this past legislative session, the Secretary of State made the comment that gave him chills to think about the poll workers' intimidation that had necessitated passing the law NRS 293.705, initiated in 2023. The law reads in part, it is unlawful for any person to use, threaten, or attempt to use any force, intimidation, coercion, violence, restraint, or undue influence with the intent to interfere with the performance of the duties of any elections officer. Violation of this law are guilty of Category E felony. As a Nevada voter curious about what prompted the need for this bill, employed the Freedom of Information Act, sending a letter to the county clerks, Nevada's 16 counties, Carson City, and the Secretary of State for records that document incidences such as those listed in NRS 293.705. 15 recipients responded they had no such records. 2 recipients responded with records of some incidents threatening emails and phone calls. It was difficult to determine if any of the received information warrant a law the scope of 705. But back to the Secretary. Apparently their office felt it did not have enough information to warrant the law, or they did have enough information to warrant the law. However, although it was December 2023, the office received voters' requests. The requester still has not received access to any information, instead received over the last 2 years, 13 memoranda extending the receipt of the records. So the question remains, did the evidence that warranted this caustic law put all voters at risk of committing a felony? If so, are they ever going to share it with the voter who officially placed the records request to see it? Time will tell. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for your comments.
Good morning. My name is Ellen Gifford. I wanted to provide another comment yesterday regarding Chapter 2, and I didn't get to that. So I'm going to do it now. I hope that's all right. On Chapter 2, page 2, voter challenges refers to NRS 293.547, which describes the process for written challenges, but it does not refer to NRS 293.535, which also describes the process for challenges, which are, in this statute, alleging that a registered voter is not a citizen of the United States or has abandoned residence in the county. Shouldn't NRS 293.535 be included in the 2025 Procedures Manual? Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments, Ms. Gifford.
If you've recently joined and would like to provide general public comment, please press star 9 now to join the queue. Chair, we have no additional general public comment at this time.
Thank you. This time I'll close public comment on matters not on the agenda, and we will move on to the Elections Procedure Manual. Before we begin, I'm going to explain a little bit about why we are here and provide the purpose of this series of 3 public meetings, the one yesterday, the one today, and the one tomorrow. Following the 2020 election cycle, there was an exodus of election officials across our state. That occurred for a number of reasons that we will not go into today, but suffice to say that the increased rate of turnover led to the recognition that additional tools were needed to ensure that new election officials were able to be onboarded and trained in a more efficient manner. You may not have realized it, but elections administration is complicated and detailed. A new elections official must quickly gain mastery of 9 chapters of state law specific to elections, with numerous other chapters that must be referenced, as well as our state constitution. Each of those 9 chapters of law has an associated chapter of regulation that must be applied. There are additionally numerous federal laws that must be understood, as well as our U.S. Constitution and its amendments. All of these together create a complex web of inalienable rights that must be followed to ensure that the U.S. citizens who make up the Nevada electorate are able to vote in a manner of their choosing in free and fair elections. The 2023 legislature considered this challenge and ultimately passed Senate Bill 54, which was signed by the governor and then codified into NRS 293.5202. It is a short statute, so I will read it in its entirety now. NRS 293.5202, Elections Procedures Manual, Requirements, Submission to Legislative Commission. Subsection 1. At least once every 2 years, the Secretary of State shall prepare, maintain, and publish an elections procedure manual to ensure correctness, impartiality, uniformity, and efficiency in the elections procedures of the state. Each county clerk and city clerk is required to comply with the procedures set forth in the most current version of the elections procedures manual. Subsection 2. The Elections Procedure Manual required pursuant to Subsection 1 must include, without limitation, guidance and standards for administering an election that are consistent with the provisions of this title and any regulations adopted by the Secretary of State pursuant thereto. Subsection 3. The most recent version of the Elections Procedure Manual, prepared pursuant to Subsection 1, must be submitted by the Secretary of State to the Legislative Commission for approval not less frequently than every 4 years. The Secretary of State may make any change to the Elections Procedure Manual that is not substantively related to administering an election without the approval of the Legislative Commission. Subsection 4. Nothing in this section authorizes the Secretary of State to include any provision in the Elections Procedure Manual that amends or conflicts with any provision of state or federal law or regulations. There are 2 key parts of that statute that I'd like to highlight before we get started. First, the entire purpose of the Elections Procedure Manual is captured in that first subsection, quote, to ensure correctness, impartiality, uniformity, and efficiency in the elections procedures of this state, end quote. That's the exact goal and direction we've been working towards as this procedure manual has been developed over the last few years. Second, subsection 4 clarifies that the Elections Procedure Manual cannot amend or conflict with any provision of state or federal law or regulations. To clarify, our laws are created by our elected legislators and must be signed by the governor. Regulations must also follow a very specific process before ultimately being approved by the Legislative Commission, a body made up of 12 elected legislators. In other words, this procedure manual cannot conflict, again, with laws or regulations, but rather provides clarity on those laws and regulations. So here's how this will work today. In a moment, Ms. Hardy will read into the record a description of one chapter of the Elections Procedure Manual. We will then go to public comment so that you can provide feedback on that chapter. Once we are done, we'll move on to the next chapter, and the process will repeat itself until we're done today. We have split the chapters of the Elections Procedure Manual into 3 days, specifically to enable members of the public opportunities to provide feedback without sacrificing an entire day, and to ensure that we are not rushed in the process. I want to remind everyone that our discussion today during this meeting will be focused on the proposed chapters of the Elections Procedure Manual listed in the agenda. We should not discuss changing our state laws, which, of course, are created by the legislature. This meeting series will not alter any existing laws. The Elections Procedure Manual cannot make something illegal that is otherwise legal, nor make something legal that is otherwise illegal. If there are general questions about elections procedures, we'll be able to discuss them today as long as they generally relate to the proposed chapters of the Elections Procedure Manual. If there are questions that extend beyond the items on the agenda, I would be more than happy to set up a separate meeting at another time. To do so, please contact me at the email via nvelect@sos.nv.gov. Again, nvelect@sos.nv.gov. Finally, a few administrative notes. We will all be taking notes while you're providing comments. If you see us looking down, it's because we are typing or writing. When we get to public comment, we will first take public comment here in Carson City, then in Las Vegas, and finally on the phones. To be clear, this meeting is a discussion. If you ask a question, as long as it's generally related to the agenda item, we'll be able to answer it. Once we are complete here today, my team and I will discuss and analyze your suggestions, bring them to the clerks for input if necessary, before ultimately making recommendations to the secretary. Finally, I understand that discussions about elections can get intense, and I'm excited about talking with you today. But I must insist that everyone treat each other with dignity and respect. Your fellow Americans in this room and listening in today may have different opinions, but they are worthy of your courtesy. Agenda item 4. I'll now turn it over to Ms. Hardy for a review of Chapter 3.
Thank you, Mark. Before I begin, I'd like to clarify for the record that our work on the Elections Procedure Manual is not complete, nor will it likely ever be complete. What you see online is our latest update, but work will continue over the next 2 years as we continue to find ways to improve it. The Elections Procedure Manual has 4 main audiences. The first consists of state election officials, which generally includes the members of the Secretary of State's Elections Division. The second consists of county election officials, who have a number of unique statutory responsibilities separate from both state and city election officials. The third consists of city election officials. And the fourth consists of members of the public. Our goal is to establish the Elections Procedure Manual as the go-to document for anyone as an initial starting point for any questions about elections, voting, registering to vote, candidate filing, petitions, and the many other elections-related topics. While we routinely get feedback from other election officials across the state, this part in the process that we're doing today is critical to ensuring that you, members of the public, can provide feedback on the manual so that we can continue to make it better so that it meets your needs. For example, one change has already been identified. On October 9th, Dominion Voting Systems was purchased and their name was changed to Liberty Vote. We will go through the procedure manual to reflect the name change prior to submission to the Legislative Commission. Other, more substantial recommendations that we've received will be applied to the next version of the procedure manual that will be published prior to the 2028 election cycle. Turning now to the Election Procedure Manual itself. Chapter 3 relates to elections. This chapter is essentially an overview to the state's processes in conducting elections in Nevada. Chapter 3 contains generalized processes, roles, and responsibilities during an election cycle, acting as an introduction to the statutes and regulations. As a reminder, this is just a plain language introduction and cannot conflict with statute or regulation. Chapter 3 also includes information about the different types of elections in our state, ways to vote in Nevada, ballot requirements and distribution processes, operating a vote center, the description and duties of election boards, conducting and processing hand counts or recounts, canvass of returns, standards, testing, and certification of voting systems, and reporting and audit requirements. While not comprehensive, the third chapter is intended as an overview and is set up to answer some of the most common questions that we receive. Now, I'll turn it back over to Mark.
Thank you, Heather. We will now open public comment on Chapter 3. Again, starting here in Carson City, then moving to Las Vegas, and then on the phones. Is anyone here in Carson City interested? Please come to the table, press the button, and state your name for the record. Thank you.
In the 22, all 3 elections, and 24, all 4 elections. Excuse me, 3 elections. In 24, I was in the Washoe County Registrar of Voters in the count room the entire time. So any comments I make are coming from that base of experience. For example, in the general election, I was in the count room for over 80 hours observing. So I have submitted 6 forms to you electronically on the 31st of October describing procedures that I think would tighten up the manual, tighten up procedure, and prevent conflict that will arise from people observing procedures that they don't think are correct or are biased. All my reference here is going to be to Washoe County Registrar of Voters. So,
Ms. Morrison, may I interrupt real quick?
Yeah.
Mark Voloshin for the record. So first and foremost, thank you for submitting that. Want to confirm?
We did receive it.
It was
Thank you.
6 sheets.
Yes, on
okay.
November 3rd.
Yeah, good.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you so much for submitting that. And sorry, try you if you want to.
I apologize. We did receive it on November 3rd, and thank you.
Yeah, sure. I'm glad to do it.
And we will, as we review that, yeah, absolutely. I understand that your experience, the lens you're viewing that through is through Washoe, but if there's anything we can apply to the rest of the 17 counties, we certainly will do so.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, so because I'm time constrained, am I time constrained to 2 minutes here?
No.
Okay, then I'll take a little bit more time because there's a lot of detail in here. 5 of these comments relate more to what I observed in the count room. 1 is more specifically polls related. All right, so my NRS citations may not be spot on, but I think you can work from there. Okay, on my first feedback form, number 1, I'm basically discussing what is meaningful observation. The citation I'm referring to is, should an observer be able to hear or not hear what is transpiring between an election worker and a voter? And I wouldn't say that the hearing is the most important part for the observer, but we need to be able to see clearly what is going on. There are many cases, or I can think of 3 or 4 specific cases where election observers were placed so far back or at an angle we had no meaningful observation. Again, meaningful is the operative word for an observer. Can we clearly see what is transpiring between an election worker and a voter? That means I don't need to see what an election or a voter is handing to a worker or what he's writing, but I need to see if what equipment is being used, and is what equipment or what maybe identification is being asked of the worker of the voter from somebody who's working on the tables, and it just needs to be re-emphasized in the statute that we've got to have that clear line of sight. I don't know if this is discretionary, completely discretionary to the registrars, or if that is something you can put in statute. But it's really important because I've been in polls where I've politely gone up to an election team leader and say, "Sir, may I make an observation?" He'll say yes. And I'll say, as observers, we cannot see anything that is going on in the front of the room. And I try to make a suggestion, could we move here? Could we angle over here? And in 3 polls specifically, I got flat out no's and walkaways from me, not even a consideration. So I think that's wrong. So that's it on my first feedback form.
May I address that?
Sure.
Perfect. Mark Voloshin for the record. So very much appreciate your commentary on meaningful observation. I'll tell you, that has been an ongoing discussion for the 5 years I have been the elections director for our state. Interestingly enough, again, and just to clarify, this procedure manual can't, like we had mentioned, change statute. This is also not a regulatory workshop. And the definition for meaningful observation is actually captured in regulation. In NAC, it's 293.245, subsections 9B really covers it. So I mentioned that one because if there's a change to the definition of meaningful observation in that regulation, it would have to go through the regulatory process, which we are looking across the regulations, and there's a separate series of meetings that we'll be having in the coming months to address some proposed regulatory changes. Beyond that, though, I want to reassure you that, when we talk about observation in general, this is something that there's a high level of discretion at the county election official level, in part because when you look at the Washoe buildings like you've been in, when you look at really across all 17 of our counties, the physical locations vary so much that when we've talked about should there be a minimum amount of feet between, or a maximum even between the observer and the action they're seeing? There's simply no way for consistency across the state, just given the numbers of buildings and the sizes and those sorts of things. But that being said, again, I know from talking with all 17 election officials at the county level, the clerks and registrars, they take observation very seriously, as does the secretary and our entire team. We want you in those rooms. We need you to observe. We want you to be able to keep us, accountable and to review that. The election observer role is equally important, I would argue, as a poll worker or any other election official for that matter. And so because of that, I know that there are a number of ongoing discussions in each of the counties about, can they change something? What has changed since the last election cycle? There are new polling places that are being considered, for example, across Washoe County specifically, and I don't want to spoil the surprise and which ones are going to ultimately have contracts. I know the registrar is working very hard with the county team on that. But as the conditions change and there's new polling places, as there's discussions about the room off of 9th Street there, up in Washoe where the registrar's office is, what can they do to improve and enhance the observation? Those conversations are ongoing. I don't want to commit them to one thing or another. It certainly wouldn't be my place to do so, but I just want to reassure you that not one single county has ever said to me or the secretary or anybody on the team, we're good. We're not interested in supporting observation or trying to enhance it. Quite the opposite. Again, in the interim periods between the last general election and the upcoming primary, that has been a high topic of conversation. So I anticipate, again, I'm not going to say that everyone's going to be pleased, but I do know that across the state there have been improvements and ongoing discussions about observation and how we can support observers at the polls, in central count, across the process, because it truly, like sunlight is the best, I don't remember the phrase. It's important for observation.
All right, thank you. Thank you, I appreciate that. I am glad it's being taken very seriously. I don't doubt that it is. On one of my later feedback forms, I do discuss that there is no count room set up in Carson City County. And the observers were confined to, or were sequestered to sit only in the lobby with a computer screen, 4-panel computer screen, to observe what was going on in the count room. And there was no ability to be in the room. I would beg to differ with Mr. Hone that is not meaningful. And I hope that doesn't happen again there, but that I think is part of his discretion. Rather, it's not a statutory thing. I think that's discretion. Maybe we can give a little bit more flexibility but in the polls, but if we can't see what's happening in the count room in any county, I think that's a serious problem. And that's my opinion, so.
And Mark Voloshin for the record, and Ms. Morrison, I appreciate you highlighting beyond just Washoe. Clerk Hohen, again, know for a fact he's in conversations with his legal counsel at the county as well, trying to find ways to maximize observation. And there's a number of changes in Carson City too, again, across the state that are being considered and reviewed. So
That's great. Okay.
yes, ma'am.
All right, thank you. All right, so this is what I call my feedback form number 2. I'd like to have, and I don't know if this is county discretion or if this is something you put in the manual, but so binoculars, or rather cameras and recording devices are not permitted in the count rooms. So, understood. And what I would like to have that expanded to, based on personal experiences, I would like to have binoculars, any long-range glasses, and long-lens cameras be prohibited for use by observers in the count rooms. I saw that routinely happening in Washoe County daily. And when I would ask some of the people using that kind of equipment, like, isn't that going a little bit overboard? And they'll point up to the wall, and where all the rules are posted, properly posted. They say it's not prohibited, so we can do it. So I would suggest that provides invasion of privacy, and they're using binoculars to focus in on the screens that signature verifiers are using, or people in the cure, or different processes of the mail ballot processing when they're checking signatures, they're curing, they are writing new ballots because the ballots were flawed. So I understand that it's important to have good line of sight or enough overhead cameras in the count room in order to alleviate any concern by observers that its signatures are not being properly passed off or approved. But at a minimum, something could be put in writing to add to the verbiage on the wall signage in a count room saying no binoculars, no long-range glasses, no long-range cameras. That's one suggestion there.
Thank you, Ms. Morrison. Mark Vlosh for the record. Appreciate the comments on that. I'd have to double check to see if it would require a statutory or regulatory change, but we'll review that, consider it, and certainly talk with the clerks and the secretary about that. But thank you.
Okay, all right, thank you. All right, on form number 3 regarding vote adjudication board, your wording is to, if practicable, voters should be of different members should be of different political parties. I would like that corrected to members must be of different political parties. Throughout the different parts of the cure process, signature verification, cure, and voter intent processes, it is stated that members of those boards or the election or the workers in the count room need to be of different political parties. And sometimes I observed, because you can tell by name tag usually, that they are of different parties. I just want this to be, or I suggest striking practicable and correct it that they must be of different political parties. It's critical for fairness. It's going to eliminate bias accusations, which I heard many, many times sitting in a count room daily in 2024. And this will happen again if it's not corrected. So.
Thank you for that comment too, Ms. Morrison. Mark Vlosh for the record. I believe that's a statutory requirement that it says if practicable in statute, and I can double check, but as it relates to some of the election boards, I do know that in some of our counties, finding members of multiple political parties is exceptionally challenging.
Yeah, I got that. Yeah. I'm sorry.
No, I understand. And the question would be then if it were a flat out requirement, but for example, in some of our counties, if you couldn't find someone who wasn't perhaps a Republican or a member of the Republican Party, like, then what? Would the board not be able to convene? And I think that's part of the reason, the intent. Don't want to speak for the legislator that proposed that or originally included that back in, I believe it was 1960 when the statute was first made. But I think that is part of the intent, that
Yeah.
as much as possible. And I do know also, again, speaking of things that I know our counties continue to talk about, the poll worker recruitment will always be a challenge for every election. Some folks maybe don't pay attention if it's not a presidential election, and typically voter turnout in a midterm primary is the lowest it ever is in our state elections. So in other words, this coming June, still a desperate need for poll workers across the parties. And I 100% agree that in a perfect world, there's just a good blending of different political affiliations, from Independent American Party to nonpartisan to major political parties across the board. We just, and perhaps if you'd be willing to help us with the recruitment efforts, we'd be open to it as well. But
I'm doing that.
excellent.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I understand that it can be difficult, or it might be difficult, to ensure that there will be enough people of different political parties present on a particular shift in a count room, so that you have, so it's a bipartisan work. I got it. But in Washoe County, with our bigger counties, that shouldn't be a problem. Yeah. And, okay. All right, so on to number 4. Am I still okay on time here?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, all right. Okay, let's see. Observing counting of ballots. Okay, I kind of covered this earlier in describing that it's really important that the observers be able to be seated inside the room and not be confined to a lobby and a computer screen. So in Washoe, we got the count room, the booth inside the count room. We got the observer booth, but we also have the computer screen in the lobby in the registrar's office, his office lobby. That's fine. So that gives ample options for people to be in the booth or in the count room. But if there's no observers in the count room, again, that's a problem for meaningful observation and wondering what's really going on in there. We can't see the name tags of the people who are working, for their party affiliations. There's multiple observations that we can't make. And I'm going to make the case that any count room in the state can at least fit 2 observers jammed into a corner in that room. So that at least 2, because we've got to have at least one of the 2 major parties represented there. So I'll keep that short. Oh, also, cameras, internal use of cameras in the central county place. That was a constant bone of contention or complaint in the count room in Washoe County. Whether it was the insufficient number of cameras, or whether the cameras were not angled right. There were, and I agree with people who were observers who are complaining about it generally. There were dead areas where there was no camera, where people are doing, there are boards who are doing adjudication on ballots, and there was no camera line of sight. We don't need line of sight to see what's actually on their paper, but we need to see generally what's going on. And our people who are observers were saying, are they just taking ballots out of their trays and shoving them somewhere else? Because we couldn't see the full work area. If cameras can be increased in number, but also angled properly so we have more meaningful observation, this will be an issue again. I know people will be complaining. I'm going to be there in 26. It will be complaints again about this if it's not improved. And again, that may be at the county level, not your level. So. All right, my form number 5, signature reviewing ballots. Okay, this was another area of big contention, and the issue is that when somebody is working, so you're working with the mail ballots, and if you have individuals who are doing signature verification or cure or sorting out voter intent. Now they may be set up as a single person going through signatures on a screen and comparing, or they may be in pairs if they're doing other stages of verification or cure. The issue is that the people who are working can see what the voter's political registration is right in front of them on the screen. And that's a big problem because people sitting in the observer's booth are saying, oh, well, he is making a decision on this signature based on the political party that is flashing on the screen. So I'm going to suggest that software can be toggled on, or different parts of software can be toggled on and off by management so that the lower levels of staff, whether they're temporary or permanent staff in the county, can't see what the person's registration is and can't. Now, I will assume that the staff are not making decisions based on what they see for party affiliation. But we in the observer's room don't know that. And I mean, it was constant complaint level about, oh, well, they're making decisions based on the party political affiliation. So this will be a big problem again if this is not solved. Now, I don't know if the software used by the counties can toggle this on and off. I know. So let me give an example. I work in tax in a CPA firm. Our partners can toggle on and off what we as enrolled agents or CPAs in the firm, what we can see. And I would suggest that that is probably a feature in the election room software also. And if it is, please make sure no one except, well, certain people should be able to access that freely, seeing the party affiliation, like the registrar, maybe the deputy registrar, county clerk, maybe one or two senior staff who are part of that department, not somebody who's been seconded from another department. There's a limited number of people who should be able to have free access to that for a variety of good reasons, but not everybody needs to see that. And if we can remove the number of people, or reduce the number of people who have access to party affiliation right in front of them for every signature that they're going through, and they're working fast, it would reduce a lot of conflict that ultimately results in questions of bias and ballot inaccuracy, election inaccuracy, or election impropriety. So, all right, last one. Okay, this is very similar. This is determining voter intent, ballot review section. Again, this is, I'm not going to talk more than about another 10 seconds on this because I just covered this really well. So any of the election boards who were determining voter intent because a ballot has been damaged or the voter intent is not clear, then they need to have no access to seeing what the party affiliation is, except unless they are the registrar, maybe the deputy registrar, one or two staff, county clerks. So. And that's it from me. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Seeing no one else in Carson City, we will go down to Las Vegas. Again, this is public comment on Chapter 3.
Yes, my name is Ed Euling. I think the comments of the previous speaker were excellent, and the way you handle it is very good. I do have one question about that. Is the word meaningful in the law, or is she asking for it to be placed in the law?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Euling. Mark Floshin for the record. So currently it is in administrative code. So in NAC 293.245, subsection 9B defines meaningful observation as, it says very specifically, quote, meaningful observation means a person may observe the identification of voters who appear at a polling place to vote, the distribution of a ballot or voting machine card to a voter, the movement of a voter to a voting booth, the return of a ballot or voting machine card by a voter, and the exiting of a polling place by a voter. The term does not include allowing the person to, 1, listen to the view the personal information of a voter's ballot, or selections on a voting machine, or and this is a subsection 2 to sub 9B, listen to any conversation between election board officers or between a voter and an election board officer, end quote. So to answer more specifically, yes, it is in regulation, but not in statute.
Oh. And what's the difference between regulations and statute?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Ewing. Mark Volashin for the record. So the statutes under Nevada's revised statutes, NRS, those are the that start as a bill, ultimately become a law signed by the governor after having been created by our legislature. Regulations carry the weight of law, but are created by different organizations and individuals who have the authority to do so. The Secretary of State has authority under NRS 293-247 to create regulations relating to the conduct of elections. And this was a regulation that includes the definition of meaningful observation. So it carries the weight of law, but it is not a statute, if that helps.
I see. Because I have the idea that here in Las Vegas, there's a similar criticism of the observation process. And I know that in the case of the candidates, they are entitled to so-called observe the counting of the signatures on the ballot, on the not ballot, on the petition that they file. And when I went to that observation, I was permitted to observe the back of the computer of the person doing it. I wasn't allowed to ask any questions. I was provided zero information about whether any even the number of valid signatures were found, or that there was, and certainly there was no. It wasn't permitted to ask any question about any given signature, because there was no way of observing it. It was a totally absurd process. And I'm wondering why do you tolerate that sort of thing?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Ewing. Mark Volashin for the record. The observation elements, again, are ultimately decided at the county level. I do know that there are efforts, continuing and ongoing efforts, to increase the ability for observation of all manner of the different aspects and elements of the electoral process, including petitions and the validation of petitions, all the way through to the conduct of recounts and otherwise. And also, I know the registrar in Clark County, that she and her team continue to look at methods specific to Clark County on how to improve that process as well. So I will take your comments and address them with her to make sure that she's aware of them prior to the start of the 2026 election cycle.
Yeah, because observing the back of one's computer, that's not observing anything. Now, there's a lot of talk today about fair and free elections, impartiality, nothing against the law, provide members of the public with information. But if I know you use those words, but if you keep people off the ballot, how is that free and fair elections? And your boss, the Secretary of State, has said on numerous occasions that he has a mandate to restrict the number of. He doesn't use these terms. These are terms I'm using. He has the ability to restrict the number of candidates that are on a ballot. And
Mr. Ewing, I apologize for interrupting. Mark Volashin for the record, but I do need to clarify something real quick. So first and foremost, the First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution protects political speech aggressively, and that is something that Secretary Aguilar, myself, my team, every government official, if I'm blunt, takes very, very seriously. That means that I as an employee of the government, will not tell you what you can or can't say. But I absolutely will correct, for the record, statements that are patently false. Secretary Aguilar knows full well that he is not in a position, even with as a state elected constitutional officer, to restrict the number of candidates on the ballot, nor has he ever suggested something along those lines. Or does he feel that way? And I know that from personal experience, having talked to him about the number of candidates that we receive during our filing periods, both in January and March of every election since I've been put into this position. So I just want to clarify for the record that, again, the Secretary of State in that position does not have the ability to limit candidates on the ballot. You may proceed.
Well, he may not have the legal ability, but he has the practical ability of doing that through the manipulation of the signatures on the and other instruments. The nonpartisan candidates were particularly targeted with this and not allowed to get on the ballot. I mean, that's how can you deny that didn't happen?
Thank you for the question, Ms. Healy. Mark Voloshin for the record. As I recall, the situation you're speaking to specifically was discussed in the court of law. And as I recall, the court made a determination that you don't agree with. So again, it was not the Secretary of State, this position, or my team.
I don't think that
made that determination. Thank you.
I don't think that was raised in any of the legal papers, but in talking to other nonpartisan candidates, they had similar problems, and there's and the way you treated JFK Jr., causing millions of dollars in losses. You gave him the papers that he was supposed to use, and then when he filed the tens of thousands of kit signatures on those, you told her, "Oh, those are the wrong papers." How do you justify those things? It's all empty. It's all empty words. You say, okay, we want openness, but there isn't even a copy of Chapter 3 here in the room. Your office in Las Vegas here didn't even know that these hearings are happening. How is that open and free, and how does it? It doesn't match the words that you're using.
Thank you for the question, Ms. Healy. Mark Voloshin for the record. Everything my team does or fails to do is ultimately my responsibility, and I accept that. The issues that you're speaking of from previous election cycles have been discussed and addressed prior to the 26th cycle. But I am going to ask if it's possible, if you'd like to continue to discuss those, we can set up a meeting to discuss them at a future time. But the purpose of this public meeting today, yesterday, and tomorrow is specifically to address the Elections Procedure Manual. So unless you have any commentary on Chapter 3, I do believe that there are other individuals in the room, both there in Las Vegas as well as on the phones, that have taken some of their time, have found out about the meeting series, have reviewed the chapters, and may have feedback for the Secretary and my team and I about this manual. And if it's possible, again, open to and eager to continue our conversation about the process to file as an independent candidate for partisan office under 293-200. But I don't feel this is the appropriate time to do so when we're trying to focus on chapters 3, 4, and 5 of the procedure manual.
And why can't we see those here in paper in the hearing room? And the fact that so few people from the public are coming or participating here it indicates that the public does not know about these hearings. And so I think, what can one conclude out of that? It's intended to be that way. You really don't want to hear from the public. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Ewing. Is there anyone else in Las Vegas interested in making public comment on Chapter 3 of the procedure manual? Seeing no one move towards the desk, broadcasting, is everybody on the phone, please?
To provide public comment on Chapter 3, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue.
Good morning again. My name is Ellen Gifford. In the precinct creation section of the manual, the first paragraph is the ideal way to handle identifying the county clerk and or the registrar of voters. Clerk/registrar is clear. Next, in the election setup section, it's imperative that this section include a list of and emphasize the importance of certain items that must be in place before the polls open. As an example, in a past election, the absence of a box clearly marked surrendered ballot box at a poll location caused absolute chaos. Their surrendered ballot process drastically fell apart, and this negatively impacted the experiences of both the election board officers and the voters. Additionally, in a past election, instead of the electioneering sign that was provided, tape was placed across the sidewalk at the 100-foot spot with 100-foot markings on it. It was a very windy day, and the tape was blown loose and about to fly away. This was brought to the attention of the election board officer, and he brought out the sign. It was confirmed to me in the absence of a clearly placed electioneering sign has resulted in the arrest of uninformed citizens. And this was brought to my attention by a sheriff, actually. Next, in the observer area, there is an issue that must be addressed in this section as well. No observer should be forced to disclose their political affiliation in order to observe. There were occurrences of this in the 2024 election. In one location, there were 3 chairs, one for a Democrat, one for a Republican, one for an independent. There was an empty chair, but the person was still turned away because their party was already represented in another chair. Please address this and correct it. Lastly, I can't find anything about the process for retrieval teams and proper handling of ballot drop boxes in this chapter. I can only see information about retrieval team costs on page 109. It's not in chapter 7 either, and that whole process really needs to be addressed in this manual. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gifford. Mark Velasha for the record. Appreciate your comments. We were typing and writing as quick as we could. There is a chance I may reach out to you. I believe I do have your email still if we do have follow-up questions specifically, but I appreciate your feedback.
Caller with the last 3 digits, or you may begin.
Okay, good morning. I think I was unmuted a bit early. This is Iris Stone, Stone. I have a few minor corrections to point out in your manual in this particular section. And the first one is on page 58, first paragraph, second sentence, and the fourth line of the page. I believe there's a missing word. On that sentence, I'll read it real quick. Keep in mind, a ballot review can take place for issues other voter intent. I think the word then it should be inserted for issues other than voter intent. And then the sentence goes on. So that's the first input. The second one is on the same page, and it is notice point 99, and the NRS, it says NRS 293/293B, and that is actually not a live link. And I'm not sure if that is intended to be a live link or not, but I thought I'd point it out because all the other ones that are in the document are live links. So that's my second. And then my third and last comment is on page 95, and it is a reference. If you look at that page 95, it has a table, and in that table it references all the different statutes and a couple of administrative codes as well. And I would suggest that those links be made live because it would be, I think, helpful if someone is looking at this document and wants to look at one of the specifics that are, related to the timing and so forth. So I would suggest that those links should be inserted. That's it for me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Stone. Mark Voloshin for the record. Excellent attention to detail. We've noted those, page 58 for the first one, the footnote on 99 and the other live links. Very much appreciate that, and we'll make sure we get that addressed as well. Thank you.
Sure.
Good morning. This is Bradley Schrager, Schrager, calling from Las Vegas. And as an initial matter, I want to thank you, Mr. Voloshin, and your team for doing this. I appreciate both the transparency and the engagement that your office has undertaken in the production and revision of the Election Procedures Manual. So that is as a preparatory remark. I will probably have some other comments that I will submit separately in writing for you, but I wanted to stick a pin in one because I think it's important, and I didn't want to forget it, and I wanted your team to be aware of it. On the Chapter 3, starting on page 75, the section regarding recounts and election contests, the section purports to treat both recounts and contests at the same time, and I think that there's some explanatory bleed from one to the other. Those proceedings are obviously utterly separate. One is an administrative proceeding that has one path. The other, an election contest, is a legal proceeding akin to a lawsuit. And there's some confusion regarding what pertains to what, and there's a bit of back and forth. It may be worth considering preparing separate sections, one for recounts and their proceedings, and another for election contests and their procedures. And of course, I'd always be happy to talk to anyone on your team regarding my thoughts and the law on that. But that's my comment for today. And once again, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Schrager. Appreciate the acknowledgement of the work for the team. Certainly, I know Heather has spent no small amount of time with the team making the manual and trying to improve it. Your comments about recounts and contests being separate, understand where you're coming from, and I agree that so far it seems like the direction we are continuing to move is one of increased transparency in reduction of the complexity. And if that means we need to make it slightly longer so that there is a separate section on recounts and a separate section on contests, I think that will likely be the case, that we move in that direction. Away from a smaller document, of course, but again, the goal when it comes to elections administration, certainly from understanding the complexity of it, is more striving for understanding and not necessarily for a 5 or 10 page document that doesn't do anybody any good. So I appreciate your comments, and we'll likely be in touch soon. Thank you.
Thanks.
If you have recently joined the call and would like to provide comment on Chapter 3, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, we have no additional callers for comment.
Thank you, Broadcasting. We will close public comment on Chapter 3, and I will turn it over to Heather for a review of Chapter 4, please.
Thanks, Mark. Chapter 4 consists of information for candidates and campaigns. This chapter is intended to be a quick reference guide and also to address many of the most common questions we receive that are specific to candidates filing for office and running campaigns. Chapter 4 talks in general terms about roles and responsibilities, acting as an introduction to the statutes and regulations. As a reminder, this is just a plain language introduction and cannot conflict with statute or regulation. Chapter 4 includes information about requirements for filing for candidacy, conducting a campaign, and financial reporting requirements related to candidates and campaign finance. Although not exhaustive, the 4th chapter provides an overview and aims to address some of the most frequently asked questions we receive. Now I'll turn it back over to Mark.
Thank you, Heather. We will now open public comment on Chapter 4, starting here in Carson City. Seeing no one in Carson City, we'll go to Las Vegas. Is there anybody interested in making public comment on Chapter 4 in Las Vegas? Seeing none. Broadcasting, is there anyone on the phones, please?
Thank you, Chair. To provide public comment on items in Chapter 4, please press star 9 now to join the queue. Again, to provide public comment on Chapter 4, please press star 9 now.
Yes, good morning. This is Iris Stone again, S-T-O-N-E. Again, a very small one-letter change, but I thought you'd appreciate it since it doesn't read right. I thought it's on page 16 of Chapter 4, and it is the second paragraph on page 16 and the third line. In there, it says, let me just get it correct here. Page 16, third line. Oops, I got lost in the document. Sorry about that. I'm on 17. Okay. If a communication is approved by a candidate, in addition to disclosing on the communication that it was paid for by the candidate, the communication must state that the candidate approved the communication and disclosed with a D the street address. So it's the word disclose should have a D to it. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Stone. Mark Vlaschen for the record. Appreciate that. Again, the attention to detail, remarkable. Page 16 for everybody else at home. Second paragraph, third line, seventh word, adding a D. Very much appreciate that, and we will make sure that is corrected as well. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Chair, there are no additional callers to provide public comment at this time.
Thank you so much. In that case, I will close public comment on Chapter 4, and I will turn it back over to Heather for a review of Chapter 5.
Thank you, Mark. Turning now to the Elections Procedure Manual itself, Chapter 5 consists of petitions. This chapter provides an overview of the individual petition types and the process in Nevada. Chapter 5 talks in general terms about roles and responsibilities, acting as an introduction to the statutes and regulations. As a reminder, this is just a plain language introduction and cannot conflict with statute or regulation. Chapter 5 includes information about petition types, the requirements for each petition, ballot questions, political action committees, or PACs, and filing and signature deadlines. Now, I'll turn it back over to Mark.
Thank you, Heather. I will start by opening up public comment on Chapter 5 here in Carson City. Seeing no one in Carson City, we'll go to Las Vegas. Again, this is public comment on Chapter 5 petitions, please.
Yes, just a comment on the deadlines. When I registered to run for office, I was given a manual by your office of what the deadlines were. Which was on a Friday. I've forgotten the exact date. The third Friday of April or something like that, or the second Friday. I don't remember the date, but it was a Friday. On Thursday, actually Thursday morning, I got a letter from the county registrar saying that the deadline was that day. In other words, it was cut off a day early while we were gathering signatures, and you allowed that to happen. Your attorney allowed that to happen. So what are you talking about? You set deadlines and then you violate them. And by the way, and why can't we have these things in paper here in the office? Can we please get them for tomorrow?
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Euling. In regards to the deadlines for petitions, I believe you're looking likely at page 11 that lists the deadlines. Those really reflect simply the text of NRS 293-200. There are two different subsections that talk about the deadlines in 200, and that was part of the intent, including them in there. We also, I would add, have a published elections calendar. While the manual, again, is the idea is it's a plain language user guide, as Heather had mentioned earlier, and it reflects the text from the statutes. On the Secretary's website, we also have a calendar specific to the 2026 election cycle. It is, I will admit, a bit long. Looking at the 2026 election information page, it's the second item from the top. It's an 8.5 by 11 format. It's 14 pages long, but it also has the very specific dates and deadlines, I believe, that you're referencing relating to independent candidate petitions for partisan office, in case that's helpful as well.
So can we take that as an example? What is the deadline? And is it the same deadline in the entire state, or does it vary by county?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Euling. Mark Veloster for the record. So the statutes relating to independent candidates for partisan office, again, I don't want to necessarily go into an analysis of 293-200 right now. I will say, kind of quickly glancing at the elections calendar, though, and this is uniform across the state as it's in statute, specific to independent candidates for partisan office, period. The first day a petition of candidacy for an independent candidate for partisan office may be filed with the appropriate filing office, again, making sure that there's appropriate state. There's SOS filing. The Secretary of State's a filing office for certain offices, statewide and multi-county. Then you have, again, the county clerks and city clerks as applicable, depending on the nature of the office, the partisan office to which somebody is applying or attempting to file a petition for. That looks like it's January 2nd of 2026 is the first date. Jumping down slightly, one moment. Then it says, and this is also in 293-200, not earlier than the first Monday in March preceding the election. This is, again, the period of time filing.
What's the deadline?
The filing, are you looking at just the deadline? The deadline under 293-200. So if you look at subsection 4 of 293-200, it says petitions of candidacy must be filed not earlier than the first Monday in March preceding the general election and not later than 5 p.m. on the third Friday in June. The third Friday in June. It's also, I think, important to note, and this is something that I know oftentimes catches individuals filing for this type of petition off guard. It's important to look at subsection 2 of that same statute, 293-200 sub 2. It's a couple sentences, but one in particular that stands out that's worthy of note here. The documents that are circulated for signature in a county must be submitted to that county clerk for verification in the manner prescribed in NRS 293-1276 to 1279 inclusive, not later than 10 working days before the last day to file the petition pursuant to subsection 4. So in other words, when you look at subsection 4 and it says not later than 5 p.m. on the third Friday in June, subsection 2 says you actually have to turn those into the county clerk, because again, the county clerks are the ones who do the actual verification, not later than 10 working days before that. So you end up having to start at the third Friday in June and then work your way backwards. And those dates are captured on the elections calendar, which, again, I have the link here in front of me, but it would take me a minute to go through. Right, and I think that gets slightly more complicated too by the inclusion of Juneteenth, a state holiday as well. So something to take note of. Our calendar says June 5th is the deadline to turn in the signatures. Does that answer your question?
And what day of the week is June 5th?
June 5th of 2026 is a Friday. The first Friday in June.
Okay, and that's the problem, because the office here in Clark County is not open on Friday, and so and I was told that this is the same problem that occurred in 2024 when I was told on the very day before Friday that it had to be on that day. And so obviously it was impossible to collect more signatures. We were collecting probably about 50 a day.
It sounds to me, Mr. Ewing, Mark Velosh for the record, that's likely a worthy topic to bring up with the Registrar of Voters in Clark County sooner than not, to see if they will be open on June 5th. I don't know their specific schedule every day of the week during an election year. I will tell you that I've talked to the registrar and her team nights, weekends, Fridays even. But I think it's, again, not going to commit her or her team to something. That's very much a county decision. But I think the sooner you have that conversation, the more clarity you will have in regards to the specific day those signatures are due. And if I can help facilitate that conversation, I'm eager to do so.
Well, I think it's not fair to the people in Clark County, because that isn't how things work here. And so you should, in your manuals, you should make that clear. What is the date and the actual date, and have the county agree to that date. It may be fine that you're able to talk to her on Friday, but an ordinary candidate certainly can't go talk to her on Friday.
Mr. Ewing, Mark Velosh for the record. I won't speak for the registrar, but perhaps she does talk to candidates on Friday. I don't know. I don't know if your communications with her, I can't speak to what happened before. All I can say is that I'm more than willing to help facilitate a conversation with her or her team prior to the start of next year. And we can either wait till June, or perhaps we could do it next week or sooner than not, so that we're all on the same page. Yeah,
it should be in the manual that a manual is given to the candidates, and the date was specified in that manual, and it turned out not to be true. And I wasn't advised of it by your office until the very day before. So these are tricks that your office uses.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Euling. Is there anyone else in Las Vegas interested in making public comment on Chapter 5? Seeing none, broadcasting, can we check the phone lines, please?
To provide comment on Chapter 5, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, we have no callers to provide comment.
Thank you, broadcasting. In that case, I will close public comment on Chapter 5. Agenda item number 10. This is public comment on matters other than the Elections Procedure Manual, general public comment. Comments here will be limited to 2 minutes per person. Is anyone interested in providing public comment about a matter not on the agenda here in Carson City or in Las Vegas? We'll go to Las Vegas first. Thank you.
Yes, my name is Ed Euling. Can we please have paper tomorrow at the hearing so we know what you're talking about?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Euling. Mark Flashen for the record. I'll confer with my team and we'll make sure there's paper copies available both in Las Vegas and Carson City.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming to the table in Las Vegas. Please state your name for the record. Oh, there you go. Thank you.
Good morning, Dr. Luann Holmes. For the record, City of Las Vegas, City Clerk, and election official for municipal elections in Las Vegas. I wanted to thank you very much for this manual. I think it's an absolutely essential tool for not just county clerks and anybody that's an election official, but especially for the city clerks. I know it's something that we're utilizing in training our new city clerks. I think you did a fantastic job. Everything is very clearly delineated. I do have some grammatical corrections that I'll just send to you in writing as opposed to sit up here and go through page by page. And I would be happy to give my paper copies for tomorrow's agenda and the chapters to Mr. Hewing if you'd like.
Thank you, Dr. Holmes. I very much appreciate that. Mark Flashen for the record. And I really appreciate the inclusion and information that you're going to send to us, as well as the work that you've already put into the manual so far. I've already communicated with my team. It does sound like we're going to be able to have somebody print off some copies to bring it, the following 3 chapters, 2 chapters in the appendix for tomorrow. So again, I appreciate your offer, but we'll make sure that that's taken care of. But I also look forward to seeing your feedback, and we'll continue to work closely. If you identify anything, even later on during the election cycle, that could benefit future city clerks or you or your team, very much appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Seeing no one else in Las Vegas broadcasting, can we check the phone line, please?
To provide general public comment, please press star 9 now to join the queue. Again, to provide general public comment, please press star 9 now.
Yes, this is Iris Stone again. I have a question for Mr. Wlashen based on the comment you just made. And maybe I missed it looking through the documentation, but will there be an ongoing process to submit suggestions, for modifications to the elections manual? And is it a very specific procedure, or can we just send an email? Or both?
Thank you for the question, Ms. Stone. Mark Flashen for the record. So there's a couple ways, and it's an excellent question indeed, because as I've stressed, and Heather as well, the document is living. It's going to be ongoing in regards to its updating. So the short answer is yes. We are eager to receive feedback and commentary, especially throughout the election cycle. So if you find anything from grammatical errors to have ideas for improvements on procedures, or really clarifications, of course, right? Clarifications of the statutes or the regulations. There's a couple different ways that you can provide that information. I will double check there. I believe is in chapter 1, the feedback. In chapter 1, I'll double check exactly on which page. But we do have a method for providing feedback. But if it is something, adding a D to a word on page, 16, for example, those sorts of feedback can be sent just via email and it's acceptable. So I don't want you to worry about the formatting per se. As long as you're willing to take the time to provide that feedback to the secretary, the team, and I. But yes, it is ongoing. The only caveat will be, of course, that when we bring this manual in front of the Legislative Commission, if they approve it, it will essentially lock in place that version of the manual, with the exception of any non-substantive changes going forward. Case in point, you may remember from yesterday, the gentleman that provided commentary asking that we put citations after every paragraph. An excellent suggestion that we are going to do, but to update every paragraph on 350 pages, I would argue isn't a substantive change, but we do want to take the time to put in NRS 293-200, NRS 293-1276, et cetera, or NAC or whatever it is. And those sorts of changes will likely be published perhaps on a monthly or quarterly basis moving forward. Again, not substantive changes, which is prohibited by the statute, but those sorts of corrections, or if you again identify another of my key punching errors or those sorts of things, we will be able to make throughout next year to simply make the document better as we continue to move forward. But an excellent question again. Very much appreciate any feedback that you or anybody else is willing to make. Thank you.
Yeah, one more follow-up on that real quick. When do you anticipate to have a final document?
Another excellent question, Mark Voloshin, for the record. So the Legislative Commission has a series of meetings that they conduct throughout the year. They are essentially scheduled based on the availability of the legislators and a number of other factors that I'm not privy to. Generally speaking, there's a meeting of the Legislative Commission in December, but not always. So our plan is to bring this manual in front of a possible December meeting. There may be a meeting in February as well. Oftentimes there is to address regulatory changes. So whenever the Legislative Commission meets, either in December, January, or February is really when we anticipate bringing the manual before them.
And are those public meetings where public can listen in, or is that private?
Oh, yes, ma'am, 100%. In fact, the Legislative Commission meetings are posted actually on a website.
Okay.
If you go to, it's the state legislative page first, which is LEG, and then to interim info. If you look on the left, there's a column that goes to interim info, 2025-2026 interim. And then there's a drop-down menu when you go to that page for committees. And that one is a legislative statutory committee.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And where is it?
I think I can find my way. I know what you're talking about. I just wasn't sure if it was, a private kind of process or public, and it sounds like I should be able to find out about it then.
Yes, ma'am. And I'm checking the Legislative Commission's page right now. There is, and it looks like it's new since I last checked it. There is a meeting scheduled for Wednesday, December 17th of 2025 at 1 p.m. The agenda has not yet been published, but it does look like it will be going in room 165 of the Legislative Office Building at 7230 Amigo Street in Las Vegas. And then we'll also be video conference to room 4100 here in Carson City in the building we're in currently. And there will also be a Zoom option available on that one. Again, that's Wednesday, December 17th of 2025 at 1 p.m.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
If you've recently joined and would like to provide general public comment, please press star 9 now to join the queue. Chair, we have no additional public comment at this time.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Broadcasting. In that case, I will close the general public comment and we'll go to agenda item 11. Again, as a reminder, we will be meeting again tomorrow morning starting at 9 a.m. To cover 2 additional chapters, Chapter 6 on city clerks and Chapter 7 on election security, as well as Appendix A. We will make sure that we have printed copies of those, both north and south. But again, the documents in draft form are available online. If you have any questions, again, you can look for those on the Secretary of State's page, and there is a link also in the agenda. That being said, thank you for all your comments and involvement today. This public meeting is adjourned. Thank you.